Welcome back. I'm MCNEW. This is Duty, Grit, and Grinds. So when you're a new police officer, you get basic training like any other job, but not like any other job, I guess. It's unique to what it is. I was having a conversation just yesterday about the training a police officer goes through and some of the hurdles and challenges. I use this example, and I use this all the time in the field. The question I got asked was, is it true that a lot of new cops don't make it through training because of geography or navigation or finding whatever you want to call the art of getting from point A to point B? And I said, and I know where that comes from. I've heard that myself. I've said versions of that myself. And what I think is actually true, what I like to respond to that when I'm asked, is I don't think any new officers don't make it through training because they are lost or because they can't navigate. My theory, what I say is, I think that what happens is if you cannot make it from where you're standing when the call for service comes in to the location of the call for service without a map or without a great deal of trouble navigating, then you aren't focusing on all of the other things that you should be focusing on your way to the call for service. I use this example. If today we hire a UPS driver, been a UPS driver for 5 years, and now he thought, I think I'm going to be a police officer. So he comes and works as a police officer in the jurisdiction where he's been delivering packages. Do you think he'll have any trouble at all finding his way from point A to point B, or navigating the city streets, or knowing where this 100 block or that milepost or this location is? And of course the answer is no. And I said, so what happens is this UPS driver has an advantage. While other new people who either transplanted here or they're not from here, or they've just never had to navigate on their own, those new people, when they get dispatched to a call for service at a location that's provided to them by an address and not, next to the Piggly Wiggly or some other landmark, which is a different conversation. When those, meaning landmark navigation, is different than precise navigation that we use in emergency services. So when that new person is dispatched to a specific milepost, a specific address, they're clueless, or at least they're generally clueless about where that is. And so they now have this added layer of figuring out where that is. And there's computer systems and there's navigation for sure. But that's all a layer, where the UPS driver, he gets to spend the entire drive to this call for service, checking off boxes to prepare themselves for this call for service. Like, where should I park? What way should I come in? When you're navigating by GPS or by you're lost and you're trying to find it, you aren't strategically choosing your approach. You're not parking in a place where you have a tactical advantage. These are all things that the UPS driver has an advantage when he becomes a police officer in the jurisdiction he's been delivering parcels. And so that UPS driver gets to spend that time going, okay, I'm going to park at this location. I'm going to come in from the north. I know that, this is probably near this landmark, and they're getting to use all those tools. And in addition, they are thinking, okay, and I need to be aware of this. I need to make this radio traffic. They're listening to radio traffic. So what I've seen when I'm training new officers or when I'm debriefing FTOs who are having officers struggle with this is they are so preoccupied with navigating that they aren't doing these other things. They're not listening to radio traffic. They're not planning their approach. They're not playing through the scenarios in their head of the different things that might happen. One of the ways I answered this question yesterday is that person who's struggling in navigation is not mentally preparing for what if I get there and it's an ambush or someone's trying to kill me or something like that. All things that are low probability, but that when you've checked that box in your head, you're money ahead when something does happen and you've planned a response. And so that's a long-winded way of saying, I don't think that new people are getting let go from training for being lost. We do offer lots of tools. like suggestions for how they can improve that skill of navigating. Some of it involves, like in the old days, it was grab a phone book, pick an address at random, and go just drive to it, and then get those reps. Of course, there's no phone books now, but there's a million other ways to find a random address and drive around. So we do still encourage that. I guess that what I would say is that officer who's lost or having troubles navigating, while that may be the underlying problem that is causing these other failures, it's the other failures that end up getting you because you are so overwhelmed with learning navigation that you aren't learning this terribly complicated job to learn. And so with that, I'm just going to spend a minute talking about laying a foundation of police training so that I can get to the story at the end of this. So when you are a new police officer, you go through, and it's going to vary. I, of course, take for granted that my agency does one way, and it's pretty common in our region, but across the country, across the world, there'll be a lot of different ways. And so no matter where you live or where you're listening, some version of training takes place. And so here's what it kind of looks like around here. So when a recruit is first hired, they're going to go through some amount of pre-academy training, whether that's a day because the academy time is a quick turnaround, or it's weeks or months or whatever. So let's say they have about a month until the academy. So they get brought on, they get onboarded, and then let's say they spend about 2 weeks doing very basic introduction to different skills. We're sending them off to the police academy, so it's always nice if because you can't assume this is the case, that they've been introduced to a firearm, that they know their way around firearm safety. So they're going to spend a couple days in the classroom, a couple days at the range. There's we like to give a head start on defensive tactics, so they're going to roll around on the mat with our defensive tactics instructors. They're going to start to be introduced to the concepts of police work, those technical aspects. And so at the same time, they're gonna learn little tiny tidbits of policy. It's gonna be like a fire hose. I'll wander through different, the squad room or the patrol room or wherever, and there'll be these recruits they're really just being given not busy work because it's policy and it's important, but policy manual's like 1,000 pages, and so I'll wander through and I'll say, hey, just so you know, there's no test. Like there's a handful of policies that you got to know right now on instant recall. But right now, you're just being exposed to them for the first time. So when I say there's no test, it's not like at the end of this, you'll be tested and it's this big pass-fail thing. It's start to learn the culture, be integrated into what our policies look like, but go easy on yourself. A little bit of this is just busy work. And so they're introducing to all that. They'll do a little bit of driving, and at some point, they'll go off to the police academy. And all of this is building them up to be a uniformed police officer, right? The first job of all police officers is you go to the police academy, you come out, you hit the street, you wear a uniform, you drive a cop car, and you respond to 911 calls for service. And so this is all of our first job. Sometimes at a career fair, or I'm giving a presentation at a middle school or high school or something, people will say, how do I be a canine cop? I don't really want to be a regular cop. How do I be a detective? And it's like, or they want to be a SWAT cop. And you go, yeah, cool. We all start in the same place. Nobody applies for work as a SWAT cop straight off the street, right? Because everything builds on that initial training and experience as a police officer. And so flash forward, they've completed the basic academy. Wherever you're at, it's about 6 months, 5 to 6 months here, depending on where holidays fall. And they get the basics. They're doing mock scenes. They're doing defensive tactics, criminal law, criminal procedures. They're learning case law, Supreme Court rulings, Constitution. They're learning de-escalation through crisis intervention training. They're learning all of the basics. And so occasionally you hear someone say, like, go to the academy, come back, we'll teach you how to do cop work. And I don't actually prefer when recruits are told that. I kind of discourage it myself. Not kind of. I definitely discourage that myself, and here's why. I don't want to send recruit Smith off to the police academy with this idea that where they're going is a waste of time. There is information and skills and abilities and experience that is valuable at the police academy. We're not just checking a box. You will learn something. Does it prepare you fully for like your first day of working the road? No, because how could it, right? It's doing its best to be a simulation of what you need to know in addition to academic work. And so they go to the academy, they come back, we do some post academy, kind of fill in some of those gaps, do firearms qualification or some additional firearms training, some additional DT training, whatever the case. We're building on all this training. And so months have gone by. So now we're 6-8 months into this person and they're out on field training. And so now on FTO, paired up with a field training officer, they are responding to calls. And so different places, different ways. Let's say they are phase 1 field training, first day 1. Maybe the FTO drives a little bit, lets them kind of get acclimated to being on the road. The FTO, the training officer, is going to maybe do more of the work, like, hey, kind of tell, show, do, like watch and learn, kid, sort of idea. And then slowly they're going to give off pieces of that to the rookie officer, and that person is learning to do cop work a specific way. They're in a uniform. Uniforms never look better than they do during field training, and so they're in a uniform. They're learning their gear. Quick side story. It's interesting. I go to a lot of police academy graduations, so I see a lot of different recruits from around the state graduating, preparing to go back to their agency. And what's always kind of intriguing to me is the equipment placement on everybody's belt. They're all at the same place in their career. They're freshly graduated recruits who have gone through the state academy from different agencies. And so they have spent the academy time, from experience I recall, putting gear on their equipment belt, maybe moving things around, getting advice from different TAC officers about where their opinion, where things kind of make sense or where theirs are. And so everybody graduates the academy with their gear somewhere on their belt. And you can't help but sit and watch graduation as you see people with things just in places that will be kind of impractical once they're out on the road. Like, for example, they have spent a lot of time sitting in classroom seats or standing or whatever, but not driving around in cars, day after day, hour after hour. Surely they have spent some time in cars, but they have spent a lot of time standing or sitting in classroom seats. And so you'll see recruits with like their radio holder, because they haven't had a radio for their portable radio during their academy time. So their radio holder's like in the center of their back. And you go, did someone not tell them? Like, the first time you sit down, you'll key up a hot mic, in your car, or, you can't get to it. Or they'll have everything across their back. And I use the back as an example because as soon as you spend a week's worth of work in a patrol car, like, you start to reconsider some of the things across your back, depending on your body shape and size and strength and whatever. You're quick to move things off your back, has been my experience. And so you'll see like 2 sets of cuffs back there, pepper spray, taser, radio holder, and you just go, yep, be curious where that is in a week. And so anyways, I digress. And so you see, getting back to the matter at hand, you see rookie officers out on the street. They're learning to do this job of police work, and they're being taught a certain way. They're being taught in their uniform with their gear, and they're working into a team environment of patrol officers who respond a certain way to certain calls. And so everything is driven by protocol. Although unlike, say, our brothers in the fire department, there's a lot of decentralized command in police work where we need quick, free thinkers who can deviate from protocol quickly, not deviate from policy, but deviate from protocol when things aren't going exactly like the protocol intended. We need quick thinkers who can adjust when the situation calls for it and when the situation adjusts outside of their control. And so, but there's still a sort of logical progression that we take on calls for service. And so we have the comforts of our car, the mobile radio, the portable radio. We're wearing a vest, we're wearing a uniform, which which beyond just identifying us it's also significant that it's sort of a show of authority, meaning when I show up in a police uniform, they know who I am. And I'm with my buddies who are wearing the same clothes, and it gives credibility to the job that you're doing. And so all of that becomes how you do business day after day. And the longer you do it, the better you get at it, hopefully. And you get accustomed to knowing exactly where your handcuffs are, exactly where your pistol is, left-handed, exactly where your taser is. If you carry one of those, your magazines, hopefully you're getting dressed for work every day. You're standing in the mirror. Maybe you do some draw reps at home. If you get dressed in a locker room, maybe there's a way you can do that there. Whatever the case, you get very used to being in this outfit, behaving a certain way, and working as a patrol officer. And so the reason I set that stage, the reason I spent the last 15 minutes talking about it, is when you move from patrol work to a different work, it's different. And here's what I mean. When I moved to detectives in 2016-ish, 16, 17, I had been a police officer at that point for like more, let's say 16 years. And so because of that, I had learned to do cop work and respond to situations a certain way. I had been, call it muscle memory or whatever you want. I had adapted in life to respond a certain way to things. I, instinctively know where the equipment on my belt is. You're surrounded by backup, you're quick access to the radio, you're driving a police car, you're doing things a certain way. When you go to detectives, all that changes. When I went to detective, let me rephrase that. When I went to detectives, all that changed. You're no longer in a uniform. You're no longer in a marked patrol car. You are no longer a slave to the radio. You're not getting calls for service in the same manner. And so things are different. And it's obvious that it's different. It's not like it's a surprise. Like when you've been around for a little while, it's plain to see that detectives are doing things differently. And so when I was a new detective, I pretty early on, say within the first couple of months, I was working it was a carjacking with a stabbing. And so I'm assigned to this case. An individual, it was probably a drug rip. An individual is in their car. They're in a parking lot. A couple of guys come up to the car. This is the story that's told. And so this is the event that I'm investigating. But as the story goes, a guy sitting in his car, a couple of clowns, he's minding his own business. A couple of clowns come up to the car. He's, surprised by them. They pull him out of the car. They shake him down. They steal his money and his phone or whatever. They steal stuff from him. And in the process, he gets stabbed, not fatally, but he gets stabbed and he's injured pretty badly, but he survives. And so I get this case assigned, one day. And I'm off and running. And so somehow there was a suspect identified early on. Maybe the victim identified him a witness. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. I am assigned this case and I have a suspect and I'm doing an investigation. So let me pause right there. When I went into detectives, I was clean shaven. I kept this looking, sharp. I was shirt and tie. I had slacks, a pair of, some sort of shoe, practical dress shoe, maybe a rubber-soled dress shoe of some kind. I was looking good. I was looking sharp. Wore a pistol and a badge, and that was my gear. That was my outfit. A jacket when it was appropriate, but I was dressed sharp, clean. Like I said, clean shaven, looking good. Not in a uniform, not in a vest. For my daily activities, not driving a marked patrol car. I was in an unmarked Taurus, and I was a detective, like kind of like a movie detective. And so one day I developed information that the suspect's grandpa, and I don't remember how I got this, might know where the suspect is in this carjacking stabbing case. And so no information whatsoever that the suspect might be at the grandpa's, just that the grandpa might know where he is. So that comes up in the investigation. Like, hey, do you know where Bob might be? Oh, yeah, no, but his grandpa usually has an idea because they stay in touch. Okay, cool. So one day, I'm by myself. Uh, Sometimes we'd work in partners. Always we would, team up if we were going to do something dangerous. But like if we were just doing follow up, a lot of times we just go out by ourselves and check things out. So no belief that this bad guy's going to be there, and I'm in my little shirt and tie, and I'm going to drive up to Grandpa's. So I drive up to Grandpa's. It's outside of town. It's a rural area. It's a gravel road off of a dead end road, and we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Which if you're a sheriff's deputy, this is like every day for you. But we're city folks, smaller city, but we're used to pavement and alleys and street lights, and so we're way off. I'm way off the beaten path. I'm in, my Ford Taurus. I park and I'm gonna go. Hey, Grandpa, you know where Bob might be, and so I park my car out front. I walk around to the side where there's a big deck, and I rap on the. It happened to be a sliding door. I don't recall why I went to that door, but it was apparent that that's where you were supposed to knock. And so rap on the sliding door. Grandpa opens the door. And I said, hey, I got my badge clearly displayed. I say, Detective MCNEW, I'm investigating something, kind of hoping to track down Bob. Can you tell me where he's at? Love to talk with him. And so Grandpa goes, well, sure. In fact, he stayed here last night. And immediately I went, oh, okay. He goes, in fact, and he points behind me. That's him there. And I look, and parked right along the deck that I'm standing on, which it's like 10 feet wide, is a motorhome, RV motorhome. And looking out the window right by the door is this guy, Bob. And I thought, oh, great. Well, again, I'm a new detective. I'm kind of winging it. I don't have my vest on. I don't have a portable radio. I got a pistol and a suit jacket. And there's Bob looking at me. And so RV door swings open. He steps out directly onto the stairs of the deck like that. This thing's parked, not the staircase I came up, but another one right there. So he walks his way up onto the deck. And I'm standing now, say, 20 feet away from him as he is looking at me up and down, sizing me up, kind of looking around. And I said, you Bob? Like, listen, in the moment, I realized this is not ideal. I really should have we had external vest carriers where we could throw on, which had some amount of equipment, and, not like your patrol equipment, but it had a portable radio. I don't have any of that. Standing there by myself, face to face with Bob. And I said, you Bob? He said, yep. And he's still like looking around, like very obviously like looking for others, for my buddies, which should have been there if I had been, using my brain. I said, well, Bob, I'm going to have to take you downtown. Or something like that. Something kind of John Wayne like that. And he goes, looks me up and down, and now I've got a decision to make. I don't have proper equipment. All I have is guile and a bluff. So I can tell he's getting ready to fight or flight. It's not clear what. I take my jacket as he's kind of, I'm dramatizing a little bit, but he's kind of cracking his neck and cracking his knuckles. He's giving me indications that it's about to be on. And so I take my jacket off, which I got at Men's Warehouse. It's not a JCPenney's jacket, but and it's not a fancy designer jacket, but it's a Men's Warehouse jacket, and I don't want to get it mussed. I don't want to get it dirty. And so I take my jacket off, kind of fold it in half. I lay it over the deck rail. And I looked back at Bob and I said, Bob, I know what you're thinking right now, but you'd be wrong. I figure you better just turn around, put your hands behind your back before we make trouble. Or something like that. And I had been watching Justified at the time, just by chance. It was on TV, and I had been chipping through those episodes, and I'm like, not like intentionally in the moment, but I'm kind of like channeling this Justified. If you've never seen it, at least the early episodes, is like great show. I'm kind of channeling that energy, and so I'm like, being a cowboy. This is the Pacific Northwest. We have cowboys. I'm not one, but I'm kind of channeling that energy. And so I say, now I've taken my jacket off. I've thrown it over the deck rail, and I look him back, all 5'11" of me, 180 pounds. And I say, I know what you're thinking, Bob, but you'd be wrong. Meaning, I see you sizing me up. Like, I think I can take this guy, but you can't. So just turn around and save yourself some broken whatever. So I'll be damned if he doesn't turn around and I put him in handcuffs. And I'm walking him back to this Taurus, this Ford Taurus. And he says, you really come up here by yourself? And I said, yep. And he said something insulting, and I put him in the car. And I thought, boy, I really got away with one there. Like, that was close. This was dangerous and stupid, arguably stupid. Now, again, I didn't expect him to be there. I'm not an idiot. But what you realize is you get used to having your tools available, where if that situation on the road in a uniformed police officer, 2 months before would have gone down a lot differently. I happen to this place. There happens to be a suspect there. I've got all my tools at my disposal. Pepper spray, taser, baton, police radio, uniform, vest, and you send me back up, and you snap your fingers, and there's 5 or 6 of your closest friends there, and so you get used to responding that way, and so I have this realization. I'm like, man, that was a good learning lesson. Like, I need to be more careful. I don't have the equipment I had when I was a uniformed police officer. So flash forward. I investigating a shooting. Again, victim did not die, but they are shot. They're life-threatening injuries, but they did not die. And so pretty serious incident. And I'm tracking down witnesses and, the shooting suspect to this case. And so day after day, I'm working this case, and I'm not able to get my eyes on this suspect. They're couch surfing, transient, whatever the case. I can't get my eyes on them to watch them, detain them, whatever I had planned. I couldn't find this person. And so I get a tip that they might be staying nights in this carport in an alley. So it's in not a great area of town. So I'm not surprised when I hear that they might be staying in this area. And so couple different mornings I drive by there and the carport's empty, but it's also summer. And by the time I'm driving by on my way to work, it's like the sun's been up for a minute. And I thought, well, maybe I'm just not catching him in time. Maybe they're up and at it before the sun comes up or whatever. And so one morning I come in extra early. So let's say instead of 7, I come in at 5:30. So that in the summer, the sun's not quite bright. So I drive around, and as I'm driving down the street past this carport, no one in the carport. I'm like, okay. So I round out of the carport, and I'm driving again. I had a take-home car. I was in a shirt and tie, and a jacket maybe, but shirt and tie, no vest, no radio, pistol, and a badge. I drive down the alley, and I've not even been to work. I'm getting dressed at home. So I loop around onto the street. And there's my guy. He's standing in the yard of this house, and he coming from the carport. And I thought, I'll be damned. Well, let's go back to the way I've been doing cop work. I've been doing cop work for a long time at this point. And if I'm in a uniform and I'm in a cop car, I'm on the radio saying I'm out with one, and I'm saying stop police, and the chase is on or whatever, or it goes fine. So, but not That's not what I am. I'm in a Ford Taurus, unmarked, plain plates, tinted windows, just this normal looking car, really. And I'm dressed in plain clothes. And so I see this guy. He's walking across the yard. I bail out and I say, stop, police. Well, he bolts into the house, and I'm like barely out of the car when he runs the last 10 feet into this house of the carport where he's been staying. And so I'm like, shoot. So now I'm standing on this. I've run around the car. I'm standing on the yard or right off the yard in the sidewalk, and people start just coming out of the woodwork. 2 or 3 guys come out of this to my left, a couple of guys out of the carport to my right, and this one big guy comes out of the house. And I recognize him. This was a house we had calls for service at before, so I just recognized him from this place as the guy who lives here. And so big guy, giant specimen of a man comes out, and kind of redneck, which, you know, I can do redneck. And so I said, hey, you know, I'm looking for Phil. I used Bob last time. Phil, need him to come out. Need to talk with him. And he says, he said no, in some way or another. Could have been like, not without a warrant, or he's not here, or whatever. Basically, he said, not helping you. So, okay. Well, like slowly I start to realize like this crowd is like kind of encroaching on me. And so, and I'm not talking like they're right in my bubble, but like, let's say they're 30 feet away and 20 feet away rather than, you know, not there at all, or whatever. I'm getting uncomfortable. And so I'm like, crap. And so I did make a radio transmission when I got out of the car, right? I said, you know, whoever I was, I'm out at this location, suspect contact. So I have made an initial radio transmission, but I don't have a radio now. And so I'm standing in the yard, and I got this crowd of people around me, and I'm standing there in my loafers and my tie. And I thought, well, dang, here we are again. And so I look this fella on this staircase, you know, it's like 2 or 3 stairs down to the grass where I'm at. And I said, hey, I'm just here for Phil. I don't want any trouble. I certainly don't want any trouble for the rest of you guys, but I do need him. And they said, you know, no. I said, all right, here's what we're going to do. And I kind of scanned my gaze around to the other folks who were gathering in a very intimidating manner, and this fella standing on the stairs. And I said, here's the deal. Either he goes or y'all go. Choice is yours. And maybe he thought I was funny, or maybe he thought I was serious. Whatever the case, this big redneck guy goes, okay. He disappears into the house, and he comes out with Phil by the scruff of his shirt just as help was arriving. And out onto the yard comes my shooting suspect, who I had some help then taking into custody. And that was lesson number 2 about how it's a little bit different to handle these sorts of deals. There was some learning that occurred when you're a detective versus a uniformed police officer. And so as the years went on and I served in detectives, I continued to work cases such as those, shootings, stabbings. I did, you know, everybody's got skills. I investigated a couple of incidents related to children, children victims. Not really my cup of tea. I didn't, for a variety of reasons. Truthfully, I didn't really have the sensitivity for them. My approach wasn't right. Obviously I could have, but my natural approach to things wasn't a good fit. I think the detective sergeant at the time recognized that. I did fit very well into that world of this redneck guy and the, you know, guy up on the hill in the RV. So, I just communicated really effectively, very naturally, I guess, with that world. And so I ended up getting a lot of those cases involved in that world. And so, but as time went by, I certainly tailored my response to detective work, the way I handled incidents, the way I prepared for the difference from wearing police equipment, uniforms, vest, and patrol belts to, showing up in a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt, if that were the case. And so in the last month, say 5-6 weeks, I experimented with a variety of things with the channel. I used some software to kind of chunk up those 2-hour-long episodes into manageable bite-sized pieces. I was getting feedback that, not everyone likes to watch or listen to even 2 hours of straight content. That's not I like long podcasts, but that's not everyone's cup of tea. And so in order to kind of experiment, because it's not like there's a manual, there's a lot of opinions on YouTube and the internet about having a podcast, but it's not like there's a manual. And so just experimenting with what content people like, I started using software to chunk my videos up into what, the software thought would be good videos. Some were decent, some were crap. I didn't edit those personally. I did review them, obviously. I didn't just fire and forget. But so I've been releasing those chunks to kind of see, what we like. I have come to the kind of conclusion, not what we like, what the internet likes. And none of them have like made me think, well, that's what I have to do every time. Some, got 10 times the views as others, and it was all helpful information. And so what I have kind of retooled is, I think that bringing people on and having conversations is always more natural. I don't mind telling stories by myself, but it will be nice to have some people on the show. So I've retooled with some better 2-person equipment. I added a couple of things. And so that has been happening over the last month, and I'm, ready to start experimenting with having people on, but also just continuing to tell stories on my own. And so interestingly, I didn't release anything new for a while, and I got a couple of emails like, hey, haven't seen a new episode in a while, or comments or emails, direct messages. Anyways, I got some electronic correspondence from a couple people like, where you been? And I thought, well, actually, that's kind of cool, because I didn't, part of you wonders, like, is anyone even watching or listening as it is? And then, so, I kind of explained, I've been retooling, and a little bit of it is laziness. A little bit of it is you're busy. And so, but stay tuned. Before the new year, I hope to have something put out. And so here we are. And so then I'm at a Christmas event, actually it's at church, and a fella at church says, hey, I've been loving your stuff. Haven't seen something new in a while. And I thought, I'll be dang, like, people are watching. And we're not talking hundreds, or we're certainly not talking thousands, but dozens of people. And here's this guy like, cool. And then I'm at a family event, and a couple of close family says, hey, we were loving your stuff. Keep it up. We think, it's interesting. We don't have regular TV, and we like listening to your stories. And so that was all very encouraging. And so that helped me decide I better get something out before the new year, because I've bought the new equipment, I've retooled a little bit, and I don't really have an excuse not to. And so I'll continue using the software to break it up and make chunks and release those bite-sized pieces, because those, they actually get more views. But really the meat and potatoes, I think, are longer episodes, because that's what I like. And since this is just a hobby, I get to do what I like. And so on that note, I'm MCNEW, and this is Duty, Grit, and Grinds. Thanks for watching.